Panic descended over the encampment as the slaves reacted to the thunderous noise. As they turned to face it, they watched waves of boulders and heavy shards of ice raining down upon them. Fight or flight responses kicked in, and they lurched away, only to find they were anchored in place by their chains. Screams of terror rose as slaves entangled by the thick chains crashed into each other and fell to the ground. Shadows happily danced on black stones, and Sonny was one of the few slaves to remain upright. Unlike the rest of the poor slaves, he'd been able to prepare. Calm and collected, he gazed at the night sky, his attribute-enhanced eyes piercing the darkness, and took one measured step back. In the next second, a piece of ice the size of a man's torso hit the ground right in front of him and exploded, showering everything around with sharp shards. Others weren't that quick. As ice and stones continued to rain, many were wounded, and a few even lost their lives. Agonizing wails filled the air. The veteran soldier, the one who had whipped Sonny only a few hours before, stood amid the chaos.
On your feet, fools! Get to the wall!
He angrily tried to get the slaves to move toward the relative safety of the mountain slope. However, before anyone could heed his command, something massive came crashing down, sending a tremor through the stones beneath their feet. It fell right between the caravan and the mountain wall, plunging everything into silence for a few seconds. At first, it looked like a lump of dirty snow, roughly round, and as tall as a mounted horseman. However, once the creature unfurled its long limbs and rose, it towered over the stone platform like a nightmarish omen of death. Sonny's eyes went wide. That thing must be at least 4 meters tall. The creature had 2 stumpy legs, an emaciated, hunched torso, and disproportionately long, multi-jointed hands, 2 of them, each ending with a set of horrifying bone claws, and another 2, these shorter, ending with almost human-like fingers. The thing that at first glance looked like dirty snow turned out to be its fur, yellowish gray and ragged, thick enough to stop arrows and swords. On its head, 5 milky white eyes regarded the slaves with insect-like indifference. Beneath them, a terrible maw crowded with razor-sharp teeth was half open, as though in anticipation. Viscous drool was running down the creature's chin and dripping into the snow. What unnerved Sonny the most, though, were the strange shapes endlessly moving, worm-like, under the creature's skin. He could see them clearly because, unfortunately, he was one of those unlucky souls closest to the monstrosity, getting a nauseating first-row view. What the hell is that? He thought, stupefied. As soon as Sonny finished that thought, all hell broke loose. The creature moved, slashing its claws in his general direction. But Sonny was one step ahead. Without wasting a single moment, he jumped sideways, as far as the chain allowed, conveniently placing the broad-shouldered slave between himself and the monster. His quick reaction saved his life, as those sharp claws, each as long as a sword, sliced through the broad-shouldered man a fraction of a second later and sent streams of blood flying through the air. Drenched in the hot liquid, Sonny hit the ground, and his fellow slave, now simply a corpse, fell on him from above. Pinned to the ground, Sonny struggled to get up. Damn! Why are you so heavy? Temporarily blinded, Sonny heard a chilling howl and felt an enormous shadow passing over him. Immediately after, a deafening chorus of screams filled the night. Not paying it any attention, he tried to roll the corpse to the side, but was stopped by a forceful lurch of the chain that twisted his wrists and filled his mind with white-hot pain. Disoriented, he felt himself being dragged a few steps, but then the chain suddenly slackened, and he was able to control his hands again. Thank God for small favors. Putting his palms against the dead man's chest, he pushed with all the strength he had. The heavy corpse stubbornly resisted his attempts, but then finally fell sideways, setting Sonny free. However, he didn't get to celebrate his newly found freedom, as his blood suddenly turned to ice. At that moment, with his palms still pressed against the broad-shouldered slave's bleeding body, he felt something wriggling under the dead man's skin. He chastised himself for thinking he was somehow even minorly victorious. Pushing the corpse with his legs, Sonny crawled as far away from it as he could, which was about 1.5 meters thanks to the ever-present chain. He quickly glanced around, noticing a mass of dancing shadows and the silhouette of the monster rampaging amidst the screaming slaves on the opposite end of the stone platform. Then he concentrated on the dead body, which was starting to convulse with growing violence. On the opposite side of the corpse, the shifty slave was staring with a slackened jaw and a horrified expression on his face. Sonny waved to get his attention.
"What are you staring at? Move away from it!"
The shifty slave tried, but immediately fell. The chain was twisted between the three of them, pinned down by the broad-shouldered man's weight. Sonny clenched his teeth. Right under his eyes, the corpse was going through a nightmare-inducing metamorphosis. Strange bone growths pierced its skin, extending like spikes. The muscles bulged and wriggled as though trying to change shape. The fingernails were turning into sharp claws. The face cracked and split, bearing open a twisted mouth with one too many rows of bloodied, needle-like fangs. Sonny swallowed a lump in his throat. "That's not good." He twitched, feeling a strong urge to empty his stomach. The scholarly slave was just a few steps behind the shifty one, pointing at his shackles with a face as pale as a ghost.
The chain! It's going to get us all killed!
That remark was far from helpful, but given the circumstances, his shock was understandable. Being shackled was bad enough, but being shackled to such a horror was truly unfair. This whole situation felt off to Sonny, not just because of the dramatics, but because it didn't fit with all he knew about the nightmare spell. The spell, mysterious as it was, had its own set of rules. There were rules for what type of creatures could appear in any given nightmare, too. Nightmare creatures had their hierarchy. It went beasts, monsters, demons, devils, tyrants, terrors, and titans. There was an extremely rare caste above that, known as calamities. The first nightmare was a trial for beginners, and as such, was supposed to be populated by beasts and monsters. In rare instances, one may come face to face with a demon, but that was it. The creature that was hunting them had to be far beyond that level. Nightmare creatures' powers increased with their level, and the skill this animal had just shown, the ability to create a lesser version of itself, was something that was only seen in tyrants and above. What was this tyrant even doing in a first nightmare? Was it because of Sonny's damned fated attribute? How many more times would this screw him over? But there was no time to ponder. Unfair or not, there was only one person now who could save Sonny. Himself. The broad-shouldered man, what was left of him, slowly rose, his mouth producing strange clicking noises. Without giving him time to fully come to his senses, Sonny cursed and jumped forward, grabbing onto the length of the slackened chain. One arm of the monster, now fully equipped with 5 jagged claws, shot forward to meet him, but Sonny sidestepped it with one calculated movement. What saved his skin this time was not a quick reaction, but a simple presence of mind. Sonny never trained in any fancy combat techniques, since his childhood was spent on the streets. But the streets, too, were a kind of teacher. He had spent his whole life fighting for survival, quite often literally. That experience allowed him to keep a cool head on his shoulders in the midst of any conflict. So instead of freezing or being consumed by fear and doubt, Sonny just acted. Stepping close, he threw the chain around the monster's shoulders and pulled, pinning his hands to its body. Before the creature, still slow and groggy from its transformation, could properly react. Sonny wrapped the chain around it several times, barely saving his face from being bitten off by the creature's terrifying maw. The good thing was, the monster couldn't move its hands now. The bad thing was, the length of the chain he used to immobilize it was gone, leaving almost no distance between them.
You two!
Sonny screamed at the shifty and scholarly slaves.
Pull on that chain as though your lives depend on it!
The shifty slave and the scholar gaped at him, and then, understanding what he was thinking, started to move. Grabbing the chain from the opposite directions, they pulled as hard as they could, tightening their grip on the monster and not letting it shake loose. Sonny sighed in relief.
Well done!
The monster bulged its muscles trying to break free. The chain creaked, caught on the bone spikes as though slowly breaking apart. The scholar frowned.
Not well enough.
Without wasting any more time, Sonny threw his hands in the air and caught the creature's neck with the short, thinner chain connecting his shackles. Then, he circled the monster with a quick step and pulled, ending up back to back with it, as far away from its maw as he could. Sonny knew that he wasn't strong enough to strangle a man with his bare hands, let alone a weird, terrifying mutant like the one trying to eat him. But now, using his own back as a lever, and the weight of his whole body to pull the shackles down, he at least stood a chance. He pulled down with all his might, feeling the monster's body pressing against him, bone spikes brushing against his skin. The monster continued to struggle, clicking loudly and trying to break the chain tying him down apart. Now it was just a question of what would break first, the chain or the monster itself.
Die! Die, you bastard!
Sweat and blood were rolling down Sonny's face as he was pulling down with as much force as he could muster. Every second felt like an eternity. His strength and stamina, what little he had to begin with, were quickly running out. His wounded back, wrists, and muscles, pierced by the bone spikes, were in agony. And then, finally, Sonny felt the monster's body go limp. A moment later, a faintly familiar voice rang in the air. It was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard.
You have slain a dormant beast, Mountain King's larva.
Sonny released the dead beast and sank back to catch his breath. He'd done it. He'd fucking killed that creature's spawn. Shifty sneered at Sonny.
Don't just lay there, you idiot! The big one is still out there!
Another thunderous roar echoed in the canyon, and Sonny forced himself to his feet. There was still plenty of battle to be fought, and that monster wasn't going to care that Sonny wasn't up to it. It took all his strength to dispatch with the larva. How was he going to stand a chance against the big one?
Wait, that's not the end. You've just had a free taste. Now get the full story on the Pocket FM app, link in description. Check out our next video and playlist, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.